Firstly, welcome to the SGRT community, South Africa. Just before I begin, I'm certainly not the main highlight of this event. The main highlight would be the users. So thank you very much for coming to the evening event today. There will be a speaker in Jackie. Jackie, if I could ask you to stand up really quickly. Clearly you cannot miss Jackie in red. So Jackie will deliver a very short presentation, around about 15 minutes, on her SGRT experiences with Genesis Care. Genesis Care is a very large private network around the world where they've basically gone with SGRT as a standard of care, and she will share a lot of her experiences there. My presentation is very small. It's basically 5 minutes to let you know a little bit about what is the SGRT community. So I'll kind of start there. As I said, the main part of the community is peer-to-peer. So the SGRT community was basically founded to promote best practice. That's not just best practice for South Africa, but that's best practice around the world. What they're doing in the US, Europe, every center. We try and get as many clinical papers together, and we've created a forum where people are able to share what it is they're doing clinically. And it also allows you to contact your peers, irrespective of organizations, irrespective of job titles. You can talk to your peers about what they're doing in their practices. So that's fundamentally where the community was founded. Just to give you a few goals, on the SGRT community website itself, you will see a little business card at the front. How many have registered to SGRT? Show of hands. Okay, great. Then we've got more to sign up. So I would encourage you to sign up to sgrt.org. You will not get spam email with hundreds and hundreds of emails coming to you every day. It's basically end users that will be giving you emails, and you can ask for recommendations, etc. As I say, it's basically a discussion forum. There's a lot of publications on there as well, on a multitude of different things. There's videos from past events, and a video from this event will also will go on there as well. The meetings and events themselves, we have the first one here today. There will highly likely be another one next year and another one the year after. Every time we start an SGRT community event in a country, it's always the first, but it's a building block to a lot more. Just to give you an idea of the history, SGRT has been around, or at least the SGRT community has been around since 2016. So it's really not a lot. Our very first meeting was in Atlanta, and you can see from the picture in the bottom right, I believe it was around about 100 and 150 users that came to it. At the time, 2016, we had, of course, 0 end users signed up to SGRT community. Who wants to take a guess how many people are part of the SGRT community in the last 3 years? 1,024. Okay. I have prizes here, but that's for the quiz later. Any other guesses? 5,000. 7,500. Okay, hey, that's unfair. You work for the company. But okay. We have 8,000 members worldwide in 3 years. So that gives you a kind of idea as in just how quick the SGRT adoption has taken place worldwide. We run now 7 annual meetings. We have 8 webinars, 75 in-person education events. In fact, there was an education event here. I think we did that in February, the roadshow event. That was 76 people attended that in South Africa altogether. 50 peer reviews, I believe that's a lot more. And Jackie will talk about this a lot more than I will, but really the way we're moving towards markerless technology and treatments is one of the big things for the SGRT community as well. The future of the SGRT community for South Africa, frankly speaking, is not really in our hands. It's in your hands as end users. The more end users that are interested in SGRT, they're interested in coming to events, they're interested in the educational activities, we will certainly be here to support. We're very clinical led, so if you lead us down this path, I hope this room next year will be 100 people, 50 people. We have in London, our very first SGRT London event, I believe, was around about between 35 and 50 people. It's in November, and it now has around about 300 to 400 people coming every single year. And it's only SGRT. There is no other event that's run that day. So that gives you an idea. I'll hand over now to Jackie that will go through her presentation. But once again, thank you very much for attending. Just a little bit of housekeeping. At the end of this presentation, we go back through to the canopy and cocktail room where there is an evening meal, or a cocktail meal, and of course the drinks are all Vision RT drinks. So thank you very much. And just one final thank you would be to Yanni and his team at Axum. We couldn't have hosted this event here without them, so I would really like to thank Yanni and even give you a little round of applause for helping us get this done. Thank you.
So thanks so much for having me. I'm Jackie, as I've been introduced. I think one of probably the first things I'd say to you all is I went to that very first SGRT community user meeting in the States. I went as a complete non-believer in SGRT. I was like, what's this nonsense of using the skin surface? We use x-rays to sort of see what everything's about. And I went along after one of our physicists said, oh, you know, there's this new technology, you know, we should look at this. I was looking at installing BrainLab in one of our centres for starting an SRS service. And I actually accidentally spoke to the CEO of Vision RT, Norman, saying that I didn't really believe in the technology and that I didn't know who he was at the time. It's entirely embarrassing now when I think about it. And he said, oh, you know, sit, please, you know, enjoy the evening. You know, I'd love to speak to you after this next couple of days. And I left a complete converted over to sort of SGRT. And I just want to share with you some of our experiences. Please interrupt me, ask me any questions that you want while I'm presenting. I don't mind at all. If anything's not clear, just shout up. So I thought I'd run through a few things. It's going to be really hard for me to stick to 15 minutes because I could talk about this for hours. So I'm going to be really quick and sort of try and whiz through my slides. I'll give you a brief overview of Genesis Care, which is the company I work for, what it is we do. Our experience with SGRT to date, why and how we implemented SGRT, not only in the UK, but now over into Spain and also Australia. DIBH, what we did before and what we do now, and what the difference is with what we did before and what we do now. The time savings we've seen, not just for DIBH, but across every patient that we treat. So we do use SGRT on all of our patients, palliative patients, SBRT patients, DIBH, every single patient we have SGRT on. A sample of some audit results that we took from when we were initially rolling out, just to sort of check that what we were doing was the right thing. My passion around tattoo and marker-free treatments. We are completely markerless now for all of our patients, and that includes our SBRT patients as well. So we really trust this system to be super accurate. And then some new technology that's coming out that you may or may not be aware of that we've been in trial with Vision RT for in one of our centres in the UK around automating ID using facial recognition and also accessory tracking. So Genesis Care is a pretty big organisation. We treat about 30,000 patients a year globally. So when we think about project work, we think about starting in a centre or a country, and then we think about scaling that out across our global organisation. So we've got 34 sites in Australia, we've got 12, soon to be 13 and 14 in the UK, 22 in Spain, which is actually growing as well, and then we're starting to sort of have centres now in China. And our vision, and when we think about project work and things like SGRT, we think about, are we showing empathy for our patients in doing this? What is the purpose? Is it going to improve patient care? Are we innovating? Is this something that we're just doing because it's the latest thing, or is it actually going to improve things for us? We think about partnering. When I looked at this project, I looked at all the different SGRT options on the market. I looked at Humedic, I looked at CRAD, and we really want to partner with the organisations that we move forward with. And then also bravery to have a go. Certainly with the therapists in the room will probably be thinking tattoo-less radiotherapy sounds like some kind of like weird voodoo, like how do you even do that? And I do think there is a real element of being brave to have a go with technologies like this, but hopefully my presentation will help to alleviate some of those. So selection criteria, what I looked at, obviously I just said we looked at multiple vendors. I went out and met with all the vendors, I did site visits with all the vendors. I looked at clinical testing with the vendors and also with the clinical users. We wanted to see, obviously, very, very, very high elements of clinical accuracy, and we wanted to compare CBCT data and reporting tools in all of the systems. We needed to improve our DIBH offering. So we've offered DIBH for many years, sort of 8 years plus now, but we did use a spirometry-based system that the patient feedback on wasn't great. They didn't like it. We would put goggles on our patients. We'd put a spirometer in their mouth, a nose peg on their nose. So actually, from a patient experience point of view, it was really grim. And also one of the reasons that we wanted to move over to SGRT. We were trying to roll out an SRS service in the UK, so we wanted to look at something that would not only improve our DIBH offering, but also gave us that capability to deliver SRS. Marker-free and tattoo treatments, I'll talk a little bit more on later, but this wasn't something that we thought about initially. It wasn't part of our criteria, but it's worth mentioning here because it's probably one of the best things that have come out of us introducing SGRT. From an insurer perspective and from a patient perspective and from a consultant buy-in for the project, we needed to make sure that the report utilisation tools were really good. We could prove what we were doing was beneficial. And then automation, obviously, I'm sure, I don't know what sort of standard practices here. Do you tattoo patients and then shift from tattoos to IsoCenter? Okay, so we did something like very, very similar. And we wanted to sort of make that much more automated so that we could just free float to IsoCenter without having all those different steps where you can introduce error. So when we think about breath hold, there's loads of papers now around SGRT and DIBH and the benefits of it. This paper by Zager is one of the only ones, I believe, currently, there may be another couple now, that really proves that you have complete accuracy with Align RT and breath hold. This is a paper that shows that there's much fewer cardiac perfusion defects if you treat your left-sided breast patients with DIBH on SGRT. If any of you want that paper after this, I'll happily share with you. So this is the system that we used previously. So this was a system called Dynar. So you can see here the snorkel in the patient's mouth. You can see the nose peg, the goggles. And then we said, hey, you know, just relax in there. We're going to leave the room now, or I'll leave you all by yourself while you do like several breaths in and out. And everybody freaked out. The issue with this is that we had quite a lengthy process to coach patients to use spirometry. So obviously it's quite an unnerving process anyway. We'd do an hour's prep session with patients before we even CT'd them. Then we had lots of compliance issues where people were freaking out on the first few days around could they manage this. We listened to all our patient feedback. We analysed that at the end of every week. We asked them for feedback, and this was the main thing that they didn't like. So we would get them to breathe in and out. This was voluntary breath hold, so they were in control. It wasn't a forced breath hold like ABC, but even so, we wanted to do better. In doing better, we needed to make sure that we weren't going to compromise any clinical benefits. So we needed to make sure that whatever system we introduced that wasn't spirometry, we had the same clinical output. We wanted to improve that patient experience. We wanted to improve access to the service. So issues with the spirometer system in some of our centres was that where we didn't have a wide bore CT for planning, you couldn't fit all the kit through. So we wanted to improve access to our patients for breath hold without having to use spirometry. Things to think about if you are thinking about SGRT or changing over from a breath hold system is things like training and ClinApp support. I can say from experience, we've used multiple vendors. We've tried multiple vendors. The training package with Vision RT is much better than any of the other vendors on the market. I had to consider UK rollout and how we scale that out from one centre to 12, then to 35, then to 28 in Spain. Marketing and patient awareness was quite important for us. We wanted our patients to choose to come to us over maybe some of the public sectors or the private companies in the country. And the sort of marketing pack and the ability to work with the organisation to dual brand was quite important. Research and development from a clinician buy-in point of view. Again, I went to that first meeting going, yeah, this is not going to be very good. Who wants to use the surface? We've got IGRT. So I was talking to our doctors about this project, they wanted to see clinical papers. They wanted to see who's done what, where's the proof of it, where's the proof of concept. And Vision RT have been really, really good at collecting that data from all of their users that have been using SGRT for 10 plus years. And then engineering support, obviously with having multiple centres across the country, we needed to make sure that not only did the system not go down very often, in touch wood it doesn't, but we needed to make sure that that engineering support was in place. So sort of time savings on average, our patients, this data is actually a little bit old now. We went from having 20 to 25-minute appointments down to 15, and we're actually doing our DIBH patients now in 7.5 minutes. And that's just as the staff are getting much more used to the system, you know, coaching the patients initially is getting much better. But we've also saved that time for the radiographers doing that pre-prep session where we had to coach about all the spirometer and things like that. Our average treatment time is really, really quick. So after you've got the patient, you know, on the actual table, we can do the entirety of the process in 4.5 minutes. And that's set up, cone beam CT daily, shifts, and then treatment. So once you get used to it, it's really, really quick. Again, the methods and that quickness comes from the automation. So with the spirometer, we were constantly having to sort of get kit on and off the bed. We were having to sort mouth bites out. Whereas this now, it's all done on a handheld. It's really simple for the patient to do. They follow a system that you can see here with a yellow bar and a white bar, and they basically breathe in. They see it on a real-time coach. I think this is just this. So they use that, which is just a sort of visual in front of their face, and they breathe the one bar into another. So it's so straightforward. We can even do this without the real-time coach. If patients don't want to be that actively involved, we can just do this. It's so, so simple. And all controlled off a remote control, so you've not got radiographers having to go to multiple bits of kit in the room. This is a quick video. I'll just run this, hopefully it will run, just to show you how easy it is. And we actually show our patients this as they come in for sort of prep sessions. Let's see if I can play it. There we go. Have we got any audio? Thank you. So you'll see all the bits of kit here now. So we always set up to the free breathe surface first. So this is what you're seeing here. Staff member, by the way, hence the clothes. We would not have them dressed normally. I'll just stop that there, but it shows you that how simple the process is. So you free float the patient off a free breathe surface. So when you do your planning CT, you'll take 2 CTs. You do one free breathing with the patient normally, then you'll do another CT scan with them in breath holds, so getting them to take that breath in and hold and scan. So you set up with the patient breathing away normally in the room, and you literally free float the bed into position super quick, and that takes you straight to your isocenter position. You then flick over to your breath hold scan, which then shows you a difference in height, and you just coach your patient in and out of breath hold, and you can make tiny adjustments for lat and lung position, but never your height. So when we roll this out, we had a lot of radiographers that were like, well, you know, how do we know they're in the correct level of breath hold? Very luckily for us, our imaging protocol is that we CBCT every day prior to delivery of the fraction. So it was really easy for us to collate that data. So what we did when we were rolling out to build the confidence in the team was that we ran the system in the background as a surrogate, and I wrote down a load of figures and put them all into a spreadsheet. This is literally just a couple of results. So this is the first step. So this was setting up, coaching the patient into breath hold using the spirometry system, and I wrote down what a line RT told us. And then I wrote down what the CBCT results were. So you can see here that every time we sort of hit breath hold. What it did show us that the spirometry system didn't was any rotational issues with patients that we wouldn't have known about until we CBCT'd. So this sort of red bit here, Vision RT actually picked up the shift before we did the cone beam. This was sort of results sort of from the second step, so where we actually switched over to the system to use. So our radiographers noticed that the system was picking up things that correlated with the cone beam, and they were like, well, hey, can we just fix that before we cone beam to spare the patient any additional imaging dose? So the radiographers actually drove the change to move over to Align RT, which was great. And then from there, we actually ran a cohort of patients that started and did half of their treatment with spirometry and half of their treatment with SGRT, and we compared the data. And actually, we were more accurate with SGRT, and we had less repeat imaging, less repeat setup. So it gave, the sort of therapists drove it themselves. We ran not only Align RT, but we did run another SGRT brand to sort of see where we thought we needed to which system we wanted to roll out with globally. So this was the non-Vision RT system, and you can see, well, you may or may not be able to see, it's actually really small. This is for DIBH treatments. The setup time with the non-Vision RT system was 19.4 minutes. So we didn't see that same time saving that we saw with Align RT, where that sort of entirety of the process was right down to sort of 15 minutes initially. So this data, again, is a little bit old. So that's from the patient checking in to them leaving the room. So that's not setup and delivery time, which we talked about it being at 4.5 minutes. Interesting stuff as well that we've seen around breast setups is that we know for our left breast setups that once the patient's in breath hold, they remain in breath hold, they don't move at all. And I think our sort of, historically, we've thought that for right breast patients, that doesn't really matter. We have, we've got margins and things around, what we do to deliver right breast radiotherapy. However, this system gives you the ability to really look at that and actually, are you right in thinking that that's okay? So here's some data that I just pulled randomly 3 patients out of the system. The top one is probably what you would expect to see, so quite a constant rhythm of breathing. The second one, you can see the patient takes some pretty huge breaths, and there's quite a variance across that sort of treatment delivery. And then the bottom one, there's a massive range of movement. So patients can move up to 1.2 centimetres during beam delivery, which you would never see without this technology. You can't see it on CCTV camera, but you can see it when you start to look at the data. So we're actually now looking to treat our right breast patients in breath hold just from a stability point of view, because it's just so easy to do. There's no way we would have thought about that with spirometry, the sort of time constraints are too hard. But for this, we know we can ensure that the beam is being delivered absolutely where we want it to be, even for right breast patients. And you can just see here the range. So this is 10 patients, 10 right breast patients, with the graph on the left there as you're looking at it. It's just massive, massive scale of variance, whereas on the left, it's not. When your beam's on, your patient's still. And that just shows, again, there's a range of movement from -1.5 to 1.3 centimetres. So that's, 2-point-odd centimetres over the course. And interestingly, with some spikes of inhalation. So when we track the data back over a number of patients, we looked at 100 patients, and we can see that actually over the course of 4 or 5 minutes, patients naturally take a much bigger breath. And if you catch that during beam on time, obviously that's really bad. And then tattoo and marker-free treatments. So this, again, was driven by one of our centres in Nottingham. There's a poster just in the foyer out there. A lady called Jo Wrigley actually said, we're not actually using these tattoos anymore because we're free-floating into position. Do we actually need to do them? And we held some patient forums, asked our patients, do they want them? And I think 98% of patients said absolutely not. If we had the choice, we would not have them. So we were like, well, hey, we should try this. And actually that's now rolled out across all body sites and all areas. And this is just a small video from one of our patients that was in our trial around not tattooing. It's quite powerful though.
Genesis Care Oxford is a really lovely centre. The staff here are wonderful. They really looked after me and made me feel relaxed and comfortable here. My SGRT treatment was over a period of 15 sessions. You come in every working day, and it's only for about 15 minutes a session. I felt really good about not having to have tattoos, because a lot about having cancer is a sense of not having control over your body and your treatment and how you are. And having tattoos is just another one of those. You're having to have marks on your body that you didn't intend to have. Mentally, it was great that I didn't have to have that done. If I could give one bit of advice to somebody who's about to have SGRT treatment, it would be not to worry, follow the radiographer's advice, put the cream on, and you'll be fine.
So that lady, she's done quite a lot of talks for us, and actually now there's a lot of data coming out around body confidence and recovery from cancer treatment. And actually one of the leading things, there's a great paper that's come out of America that says cancer patients that don't have tattoos, certainly tattoos that are visible, so a lot of breast ladies, a lot of chest patients, their body confidence improves 60% quicker than patients that have had tattoos. Patients have anxiety around, they want to have them removed. And I think for us, certainly for me as a radiographer, I've been a radiographer for 20 years, and it's just presumed that if you have radiotherapy, you have tattoos. But now we don't have to do that. We did tattoos for a reason, because pen marks, they came off, they were inaccurate, in the summer they rubbed off. Actually, this technology gives us that ability to not do that to our patients, and we absolutely shouldn't do it if we don't have to. As I said, we use this for everything, so we use this for all our head and necks. We did change our shells over to faceless shells, obviously, so that the system has some topography to look at on the patient. And this is an example of one of the shells that we use for SRS. We don't use this quality of shell for our normal head and neck patients because it's not necessary. We just use a Civco shell that's open, that clips to a normal baseboard. So there doesn't need to be any additional cost unless you're doing SRS and you wanted a much more stable shell. Then SafeRT was the sort of bit that I talked about on the agenda around, can we advance this automation even more? One of our busy sites, we've implemented SafeRT, which is a facial recognition system, with the idea being that it's mounted into the maze of the linac. So as the patient walks down the maze, it says, yeah, that's Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Jones, whoever it is, and that will automatically pull up their record in Mosaic, so that there's absolutely no risk of you ever having the wrong patient moded up in your TPS. We actually also use it to recognise our patients in the waiting room. There's a lot of information governance stuff going on in the UK at the moment where we're not allowed to actually call out a patient's name in a busy waiting room. So we actually take these handhelds out, which display the patient's face, so we can just go and collect them. We can use this system in our waiting room for patients to check in, that will also then queue them so the radiographers know they're here. We use it for profile picture enrolment, as I said, in the waiting room, verification prior to treatment delivery. It now integrates through Mosaic and ARIA. It didn't when we first tested it, but it does now. We use it in CT to capture all of our equipment. So if we put everything onto the bed, it's a little iPod, we beep all the equipment, that then automatically modes up in Mosaic for us, so that when we get the patient in the room, it won't let us progress unless we've actually got the right kit on the bed for that patient. Really coolly, you can also make sticky labels, barcodes for individualised equipment, mouth bites, shells, bolus, patient-specific bolus. So again, there's no risk of picking up a wrong mouth bite if you've got 3 or 4 in your treatment room. And again, it just won't let you progress through, so it's really, really cool. And really quick and easy. So that all happens, as you're walking your patient through the maze. That's already all registering with the other radiographer that's in the room. And that is a little whistle-stop tour. I'm sure I've gone over 15 minutes, but hey-oh. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask at all?
How many patients do you have in your center?
So our centres vary. So in our Spanish sites, we see about 70 patients a day per linac, so high volume. In the UK, we range from having maybe 12 to 15 patients a day up to 45 a day. And that just depends on how sort of busy the centre is. No other reason other than that. Our Australian sites see about 55 to 60 patients a day per linac. Yeah, so a bit mixed, really. Any other questions?
So you explained that you scan the immobilization equipment at the CT.
Yeah,
So that then must be used at the LINAC,
absolutely.
that exact same equipment.
Yeah.
And how do you verify that that equipment was placed on the treatment bed?
Yeah, it's a
Is
great
it
question.
scanned?
It
or-
is scanned. So we use the handheld sort of iPod device to scan the equipment in CT. And then every day when we put the equipment onto the bed in the Linac, we then just beep it again and it goes, yep. And you have a list actually on the iPad that will say, for Mr. Smith, you're going to need foot stocks, you know, this headrest, that headrest, a shell, whatever it is. And it will actually physically tell you on the list, as well as not let you progress in the system unless you've got it. Also, if you beep something that shouldn't be there, it will also tell you that as well. It's quite cool.
It doesn't perhaps tell you in which indexing position it must be.
Not yet, but I have used a system that does do that, and actually it's really problematic. So unless your bed is at exactly the height you captured it at, it will think it's in a different indexing bar. So we actually worked with Vision RT and said for this first iteration we didn't want that, because in the sites we had that system, it was really problematic. Also, it depended on the cameras as well. So if the cameras didn't have full sight of the labels, it would also not let you progress. But then if you can't progress, you can't treat a patient. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you need to think how automated you want it until these systems are like super, super advanced. Yeah. That it, I think.
That's it.
Thanks so much, everyone.